Hyper-Aware of a Spiritual Realm by E.N.E. Chapter 9. Vintage Soul. I grew up in a home where watching old movies and TV shows was a common occurrence. Also, being the youngest meant most of the people I knew were older than me. Most of my siblings literally grew up in a different generation than I did. I had a lot of relatives, aunts, and uncles who were already on the older side. I only ever knew one of my grandparents because most of them weren't alive when I was born. I never met any of my grandfathers. I only ever got to know my grandma on my mom's side, and she came to the end of her life when I was 13. She was an artist and a fashionable lady, even until her last days. She loved to get her nails done. She gave me some of her hats when I was little, and I loved them and wore them all the time. I got used to sitting in the waiting rooms of hospitals and nursing homes as she had countless appointments. Even when I was young, it felt easy and natural to make friends with old people. It felt more familiar to me than talking to kids my own age sometimes. I loved old-fashioned dresses, and I thought Virginia Mayo was the most beautiful woman ever, and I wanted to dress like her when I was just a little girl. I feel like in some ways I knew more about history than I gave myself credit for. I just didn't realize it. I thought everyone watched old movies, went to antique shops or museums, or even personally knew a lot of older people in their lives. My other grandma died when I was only about 3 years old. I grew up with her old mirror on my dresser, using old keepsakes like stationery cards, a brooch, jewelry containers, even a cloth handkerchief that I kept in my purse. It was all normal to me. It just felt like life. It was never something I stopped loving. As I grew up, I, of course, discovered other things that were more modern or trending in the early to mid-2000s. Even as I grew into a young adult, much later I discovered I felt most confident in my body when I styled things after inspiration from the 50s. I fell in love with Audrey Hepburn and loved the casual, boyish, but also feminine and classic way she wore clothing. I think throughout my whole life thus far, I've realized how timeless some of these things actually are. I think sometimes people nowadays are quick to judge past eras without even learning about them. It makes me sad to see people almost hating history as a whole. Just because the world is broken and there are people who have done terrible things doesn't mean we should discount the story as a whole. There's so much deep knowledge and wisdom by learning the ways human nature has similarities in every century, no matter the time period, the laws, who was or wasn't in power. I firmly believe the statement, "Those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it." I've seen it play out in my own lifetime. I also don't believe we can properly know science if we don't understand history. I see people on such extreme ends, both believing whatever they see and hear without curiosity and a desire to learn more. I've fallen for it too when I was younger, especially because I'm human and my empathy has been taken advantage of. I live in a time where technology has truly taken over many things, sometimes for the better, but many times for the worse and even detriment. I live in a country that has not valued physical or mental health my entire lifetime. One of the top causes of death in my country is medical error and malpractice. In some ways, I feel like my appreciation for history makes me care about these things even more. The more I learn about something happening in the modern day, the more I desire to know the story behind it, how long it's been going on, etc. This may sound strange, but I've had an appreciation for old cemeteries and graveyards most of my life. One of my very earliest memories of childhood was throwing a flower onto my grandma's casket. I feel like since day one I've been familiar with the reality of death. But I wasn't really scared, to be honest. I don't know why. Maybe my childhood and growing up years were a bit different and strange now that I think about it. Perhaps it's why I love things from different eras I never lived in as I do. Maybe it's why I'm so drawn to black and white movies and photography that seem to calm me when I look at them. I also feel like we can learn so much and take inspiration from the silent film era. They had to be much more creative and expressive with their performance, which makes me appreciate it a lot more. They couldn't rely so much on effects and intense editing and sounds the way we do these days. Don't get me wrong, too. I'm so thankful and appreciative for the modern conveniences we have today. I truly think it all goes back to our use or misuse of the gifts we have. I'm very grateful for the access to the possibilities of filming and recording, photography and editing. I think both are blessings. I'm extremely grateful for the era I was born in because I might not be alive due to the lack of medical intervention decades ago. I'm also unbelievably grateful for the freedom I have being a woman, basic rights being denied in other time periods. I'll always find value in both the old and the new, though. Caring or even just listening to both sides of a story is something many people these days refuse to do. They would rather blindly follow or listen without curiosity to truly learn. I'll always have an appreciation and affection for vintage and antique eras. One of my favorite places to be and explore is a vintage shop or antique museum. I still have a 60s style nightgown I found at a little shop near the ocean when I was 14 years old. It's strange to me because growing up I felt like I didn't like history when I learned about it in school. Looking back, I think the main thing I didn't like was hearing so much about war, memorizing names of people who didn't feel real enough, or learning sad stories over and over again. It wasn't until later, after I actually graduated, that I realized how much I loved and was drawn to history. It finally came to life for me when I saw the beauty in it, the designs and fashion that would change throughout the decades, even learning what corsets were and what they weren't. I discovered videos and various channels online all about vintage style and having a love for old things, and I found myself relating so much to these people who were so drawn to these eras. Anything from Edwardian fashion to bright colors and flashy styles in the 60s, I found myself in love with it all. I find it sad because I used to love certain videos by a girl my age. She made some of my favorite vintage style videos, tutorials, and video blogs. But one day she announced that she believed it was a sin to love the things she did, feeling convinced that beauty and style were somehow not godly and even evil. It genuinely breaks my heart because I know that's not who God is, and I have seen too much evidence that He Himself is creative. And we are made in His image. He has literally designed us to create and be creative. He cares about the things we often think don't matter or the things we overthink way too much. It's hard to watch other people change so drastically, especially when it feels like it's not for the better. If anything, I've grown more in my love and admiration for beauty, style, and history because I know what it feels like to lose my ability to enjoy anything at all. People have a tendency to place morality on things they shouldn't, and then are completely blind that their own pride is going to be their downfall. I wish I could tell everyone somehow to not dwell so much on the things that make us unnecessarily fearful, because there are genuinely worse and more painful things to work on and heal from. Human nature focuses so much on the outward appearance, losing the ability to see people in the spiritual realm. Also, why are we so afraid of the evil presence in that realm? Are we forgetting that God is still the author, the writer of our lives and history? There are so many thoughts I have on all these things. I feel like learning the whole story of history, not just the dark things, is what helps me understand the world as a whole better. It makes me actually celebrate life more. I love old styles because it's rich with deep history. I don't care if certain tastes were strange. I still think it's beautiful because it reflects life. It tells the story of culture and how it's ever changing. It tells the story of people living their day-to-day lives just like we do now. I love history. I really do. God is still writing our lives. I really do believe that. I hope I never lose my love and affection for these old time periods. I hope there's always part of me that adores to put my hair in soft, fluffy curls while listening to old-timey music and love songs. I love the thought of passing down my own keepsakes to my grandchildren someday. I want to have faith in something bigger than me and live my life without so much fear, especially about the wrong things. I want to be open-minded enough, just enough, to learn from the past mistakes as well as wisdom. There's so much beauty throughout history, even in the midst of pain. He is still good.